The Commonwealth Parliamentary Association is a network joining members of Parliament from all of the different constituent Commonwealth countries together. It is a chance, so far as UK MPs are concerned, to interact with, to learn from, and to contribute to the thinking of parliamentarians in other Commonwealth countries.
I joined the CPA the minute I became a parliamentarian, I think more or less the first week. And the reason why I did so is because it seemed to me a wonderful opportunity to join an organisation, the main purpose of which was to create relationships with other parliamentarians across the world. And given that my previous sort of career has been largely concerned with Sub-Saharan Africa, the Far East, indeed anywhere apart from the UK, it seemed to me a very great opportunity to be able to cement some of the friendships and relationships that I'd already made, but to actually make them into a kind of sort of institutional relationship. I think that's the value of CPA.
Well, I've held the post of Shadow Foreign Minister for 3.5 years now, and obviously very much part of that role is trying to make connections with other countries. I cover the Commonwealth as a general brief, as well as other specific Commonwealth countries like India and Bangladesh, for example. So it's actually really useful having the link with the CPA in terms of putting me in touch with people in those countries, whether they come in on visits here or in a few cases actually going to visit those countries.
I think it's very good news for the UK. It helps, if you like, in our soft power diplomacy. It can be useful. I'm currently a government minister. It can be useful for the government, of whichever the government of the day, to have parliamentarians engaged in this activity. And actually can be rewarding in its own right for those parliamentarians.
My own personal view is that the parliamentary system, democracy is obviously the best form of government, but parliamentary democracy, in my view, is the best form of democracy. It's something that was obviously bequeathed to Canada by the mother of parliaments here from the United Kingdom. This is something I think that is foundational in the sense of why we are the type of society that we are today in Canada, and obviously why the United Kingdom has become the society that it is today as well.
I think we believe there's a lot we can exchange, little as maybe, but you can learn from what we have achieved. And from that you can also advise, given your experience. I think it's very important. What diplomacy means, we exchange, the interchange. It's very important.
I think as a parliamentarian, it allows us to basically learn that the problems that a country is facing, these are not unique problems. A lot of countries are facing the same problems.
Obviously, a lot of CPA members are also places where DFID is very active, and the UK has been very active for a number of years. and that's very important to see our development work at close hand and engage with local parliamentarians to see the effectiveness of that work as well.
Well, parliamentary strengthening we think is really, really important, because when you're working in countries, or particularly countries emerging from conflict, we see parliaments as part of the process of preventing those countries slipping back into conflict and actually building a much more secure future for the people. And very often governments spend a lot of money supporting the election process, but nothing like as much supporting the people who've been elected. And we think that's really what needs to be done.
Your parliament is old, has a long history, and ours is young. I'm sure we're learning a lot from the interaction with the MPs who have been meeting here. And I think it's very important. Organization, the general activities of the parliament. It's very, very important.
I think we can always usefully consider, are there things that we are doing here in our parliament that perhaps we shouldn't do? Or are there things that we're not doing that we should do? And in considering those questions, which are never finally resolved, they're matters of work in progress, because we can always learn and we can always tackle our mistakes and we can always do better, we can do a lot worse than engage in dialogue with parliamentarians from other countries.
So one of the great things about the Westminster Parliament is it's constantly changing, constantly learning, constantly reforming. It may be a very old Parliament, but it's certainly not moribund. So we can exchange ideas and we can benefit from newer parliaments, perhaps shaping up some of their methods, which might inform how we do things as well. So it's a two-way process.
And what I learnt after having joined CPA was the breadth and the depth of the work that it does in the international context, which is truly impressive in the sense that it, for example, takes up a number of themes such as gender equality, women's empowerment, climate change, within the context of parliamentarians. And it seems, again, to me that if one can get discussion going between parliamentarians and a common view as to what parliamentarians can do to combat some of the problems that we all share, then there is a much greater chance of bringing about real change.
As part of my Shadow Foreign Office portfolio, I have the International Human Rights Brief. And for example, I went to the CPA annual conference in Johannesburg a couple of years ago, where there were people from virtually every Commonwealth country there. I was asked to make a speech about the Commonwealth Charter, which is very good on paper when it comes to human rights, but obviously you need to then have a debate about how those values are being implemented in Commonwealth countries. So in terms of, not just speaking in the plenary session, but also going to workshops, having informal conversations with people there about the issues in their countries.
I think that the CPA has been, over the years that I've been a member, particularly strong in supporting and promoting gender equality and the empowerment of women, particularly in the political sphere. Obviously, there is a women's branch of the CPW, and that does amazingly good work. But I think more generally what CPA, particularly CPA UK, has done is been able to make this such a key agenda point that other CPA branches have taken it on board.
You take, for example, the women participation, women involvement. We have the highest number of women in parliament in the world. This one hasn't come overnight. We've worked hard to maintain that.
I think it is about learning that, parliamentary circumstances, there's a lot of common ground and there are individual differences, and understanding both of those things, I think, is really important to having a good, constructive relationship.
We have to, I think we have to realize that Pakistan, the subcontinent, the United Kingdom, we are all part of a Commonwealth of nations, and especially the British Commonwealth. We've had a shared experience of over 200 years, and this experience is a very enriching experience. It allows us to come together, to share our beliefs, to share our shared experiences, and once again, we have to find common ground, and there is a lot of common ground.
We have ties of history. For the most part, we enjoy ties of language, and we have ties of interest in economic development, interest in good governance, interest in human rights, interest too in our relations as parliamentarians with each other. I do think there's something quite special about the Commonwealth, the links that have existed and which are retained between us. And so I would say to a new member of Parliament, alongside all of the domestic issues in which he or she is very rightly and properly interested on behalf of constituents, give a thought to joining the CPA, getting involved, taking the opportunity to visit other Commonwealth countries from time to time and to receive visiting delegations from Commonwealth countries to the UK, because I think that's all part of the process of becoming a better informed, more effective and more worldly wise parliamentarian.